guys. I hope everyone is well. Just gonna take a few minutes. I was pondering over whether I should do this as a recording or whether I should do this as a live, but then I thought, okay, let's just do it as a live, inshallah. Um, yeah, so today's topic: why does atheism really exist? This is what I want to sort of discuss with you guys today and share with you guys today quickly. So, look, what's very interesting is, let's see, what's very interesting is that when I really first understood Nadeem Ashraf has joined us because of Dead Hearts. Yeah, absolutely, bro. That's one reason. That's the biggest reason. But what leads to Dead Hearts is another question, which we'll probably discuss on our next live next Tuesday, inshallah. So, when I first got to grips with atheism and I really understood atheism, one of the biggest questions that came into my mind was, how can such a frail and weak worldview, perspective, ideology, philosophy, whatever you want to call it, because I know many atheists have a problem with me referring to atheism as sometimes they have a problem when I refer to it as a worldview, sometimes they have a problem when I refer to it as a philosophy, whatever the case is. But the question that arose in my mind when I first understood atheism was, how can such a weak, frail perspective, outlook, that is atheism, exist? I really couldn't understand this. It really baffled me for a very long time. How can it even have whatever traction it has in the world? Why is it quote unquote popular to whatever level it is popular, which is, it's not really popular and it's actually dying out. So that was the biggest mystery for me, if you like. And then when I looked further, eventually it dawned upon me, well, there is a historical context to this. Atheism was useful at one point in history, not too long ago. Very useful, extremely useful, especially at the turn of the 18th century, when the Enlightenment movement began and the Enlightenment philosophers, thinkers, started to develop this new vision for the world. Hence began modernity. And it was at this time or this period that atheism's utility became apparent to these people. They understood that there was a benefit behind adopting atheism. And I want to read something to you guys. It's from a book that I actually put up a post about yesterday. It's called The Twilight of Atheism by Alistair McGrath. And it's an extremely interesting book from the perspective of the history of atheism. Probably one of the better ones that I've gone through. And I'm going to read this section to you guys, and then I'm going to discuss this a bit further. And I think he captures this in a very beautiful way. Now, this is chapter 9. It's called Postmodernity, Atheism, and Radical Culture Change. He's speaking about cultures in the beginning of the chapter and how cultures sometimes immediately emerge and then as quickly die out. And then on page 2 of this chapter, he says, the first such upheaval is the rise of modernity, a confident, ebullient movement, convinced of the supreme ability of human reason to understand the world and hence to master and control it. There was no longer any need for a God to confirm or underwrite a settled and stable order of moral values, social relations, or rules of thought. All could be established with certainty and universality through human reason. Atheism was a religious belief of choice for this movement. I want you to really pay attention here. He says atheism was a religious belief of choice for this movement in that it resonated profoundly with its presuppositions and goals. It is no accident that the rise of atheism in the West is so closely tied to that of modernity. They are two sides of the same coin. He puts in a very, very beautiful and profound way, and this is exactly the point that I want to emphasize today, which is the reason atheism became popular was not because it has strong philosophical, rational foundations, not because it's something that's solid and substantial and addresses, answers provides a perspective to human concerns and questions and problems. No, none of this. None, if anything, it creates problems, especially from an existential perspective. It creates holes, it creates issues that we struggle to deal with. And we'll discuss this maybe in a moment, but it wasn't for any of these reasons. It was predominantly because it was in line with the narrative of the thinkers of the Enlightenment movement, the modernists, those that brought modernity into existence. You know, because you have to remember the context there, guys. Pre-18th century world was a world which was governed by religion, but in particular Christianity. And Christianity, sure, there was still some good there from the perspective of grounding certain things for humanity, such as morals, ethics, etc. But, you know, Christianity had its own problems. And there was a lot of oppression. There was a lot of injustice. You know, there was a lot of oppression as far as the free thinkers were concerned, the scientists of the time, the mathematicians, the physicists, the individuals that wanted to sort of develop certain sciences. Christianity controlled and governed the whole of the world, for every aspect of life, whether it was education, whether it was politics, whether it was, you know, your social interactions, money, power, all of it. And because of this oppression, eventually there was this movement that started to take shape, which we refer to as the Enlightenment. And they wanted to move away from this. They wanted to turn their backs towards this. And, you know, you can imagine how it probably took place, that, you know, they had this whole history of oppression and suffering at the hands of, quote unquote, the religious, those that believed in God. So naturally, there's going to be this disliking towards God. And they had this conception or this idea that the way to move forward was to disassociate from religion, to disassociate from the church, and to focus on the development of knowledge, the development of material sciences, the development of this material world. So the key shift that took place at this time was the focus went from religion and God to the material world and progress in the material world. Now, obviously, if this was the idea, now you can see how atheism was probably, or fits into this type of outlook. Because what does atheism say? What is the idea? There is no God, there is no creator. Now, two things happen. You get two things from this. Number one, the removal of God. Number two, what's very interesting is that there is therefore the removal automatically by extension of any objective grounding for morality and any objective grounding for meaning, purpose. Things become very fluid now, right? Anything goes right now, right? So this is very, very convenient, because this is the type of mindset you need in human beings to reshape their thinking and reshape their focus towards going from God to materialism and the material world and progress in the material world, to sell this brand new idea to humanity, to reshape the way they thought about things in the world. You had to open up that space for them, right? Psychologically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And atheism was a perfect fit. And that's why I think he refers to this as the religion of choice for the modernists, because one, human beings by their very nature are religious. They need a code, they need a way. So atheism is a type of way. You know, obviously the atheists would debate it's not a religion, but you can see in which context he's referring to atheism as a religion here. So it opened up that space for people to work with, the thinkers of the time to work with and to reshape the thinking of humanity, because there was no moral grounding anymore, no moral anchor. There was no ultimate objective meaning behind life or the purpose of life anymore. So you can provide a new meaning, a new outlook, a new objective, a new purpose for humanity. And what was that? That was for humanity to believe now that the purpose of their existence, the meaning of their life, was to progress and to progress materially. That we had to build a worldly utopia. We had to build the paradise on earth. That was the vision. That was the goal of humanity, to make the most of this worldly life. Now, obviously, to be a bit nuanced here, you know, the Enlightenment thinkers weren't that cutthroat. They you know, like, you know, I think it was David Hume or Bertrand, I don't remember exactly who it was, one of the philosophers, who said that, you know, if you were to ask some of these Enlightenment thinkers in regards to their beliefs about, you know, God, they will probably acknowledge God. still at that time, but they weren't. They removed teleology, meaning they removed meaning from the idea of God. There may be a creator, a cause, a deistic type of cause that's creating everything, running everything. Nothing to do with us, nothing to do with this world. There is no meaning, there is no purpose behind it. So they weren't that sort of, they weren't like, oh, okay, no, they weren't like out and out atheists, like the type of naturalist atheists such as the Dawkins of today. However, they were moving towards that direction. So atheism was a natural fit. They moved away from God. They reshaped the thinking of man and woman in this world, and that's the world we're born into today. So atheism got its break. It's like they say, its debut, its first big hit during that period. That's where it started. It was carried by the modernists, the modern movement, the Enlightenment movement, and that's where it started to get popular, and people started to adopt it because it just was something that was popular, something that was becoming a trend, something that was in line with, the new way of looking at the world, and it just fit. Just like McGrath says, two sides of the same coin. And that sort of solves the issue here now, which was, why is atheism still around, even though it's so, when you really understand it and get to its root, and you understand its foundations, you see how weak it is. It provides no answers, like I said already, which is it creates problems for humanity. It doesn't provide you with any answers. It removes any understanding of objective meaning and purpose. It doesn't exist. And it removes any objective anchoring for morality. It basically, like I said many times before, it strips you from the very things that make you a human being. It strips you from this completely. You have no account. But what's very interesting, one of the things I guess that wasn't considered is that for any civilization to progress and to grow, I mean, civilizations weren't built by atheists, historically speaking. And this whole thing about removing God, it wasn't going to work for long, because when you remove the moral and existential framework that's required for progress to be made, for civilizations to flourish, well, you're gonna come crashing down. And this is what we're seeing now in the world today. People are moving away. Well, we don't really live in what you'd refer to as a modern world. We live in a postmodern world, right? So people are moving away from modernism, and there's a rebellion against modernism, and that's the postmodernist movement. They're not buying it anymore. They don't accept this whole idea of this one way of looking at things. Human reason is the way forward. We work things out, we understand things. There are absolutes from that perspective. They've seen through the lies now, because it's been going on for a very long time, and we've actually seen, the detrimental effects of the modernist ideology as well, to a great degree. For example, look at what we're doing to the world today. Global warming is a big issue. The poor distribution of wealth across the world is a huge issue. We're destroying the planet. We're destroying ourselves. It's funny. I was reading. There's a book, very interesting book called "Civilized to Death." This obviously, there's things that I don't agree with in there, but there are some very interesting points the author makes, and he highlights that, look, we're nowadays, we boast and we're proud of the fact that we've developed so much in the sphere of science and medicine, that we're creating all of these amazing cures for diseases, that never existed before. But what's interesting is that we're first creating those diseases that we're curing afterwards. It's many of the diseases we find in the world today either didn't exist prior to the modern world, or they weren't so much of a problem. They didn't exist to the level they exist today. So we're actually just curing, in many cases, curing diseases that we're creating. So it was almost in this perpetual loop, and we're not really progressing from that perspective. We're just trying to, fix the damage that we're doing. So I thought that was very interesting, because, I mean, think about it. The industrialization, to the extent that it's taking place, and it is continuing to take place, we're destroying the planet. Most people complain about cigarettes being, carcinogenic, or whatever you refer to it as, having carcinogens. But according to, I think it's the what do they call it? Global Cancer Association, World Cancer Association, something like that. What they published and they highlighted a few years ago was that air pollution is a grade one, a class one carcinogen. It's as bad as smoking for you, the air that we're breathing, especially in cities, because of all of the smoke that's been put out by, industry. So it's very interesting, and people, going back to the point, people are starting to see, the ill effects of the ideas and ideologies that came to birth during the Enlightenment period, and this whole focus and fixation on progress, material progress, making as much as you can of the material world. And there was certain ideas, certain individuals through over the past couple of 100 years, even recently, who tried to, you know, push the very same Enlightenment philosophy through a positive perspective lens. For example, Marx, he had this idea of his communist idea of, and he tried to push this idea of equality and everyone being equal from a social economic perspective. I mean, it's not really worked, has it? If you think about it, and obviously Marx's ideas, when they were implemented on an ideological, political level in the Soviet Union, we saw, some of the atrocities that took place there. But it hasn't really worked. And going back to the book again, Civilized to Death, the author also highlights another issue that's been created in the modern world, is that for the very first time in history, we're seeing people dying from either starvation or dying from overeating, obesity. It never existed before. It's the product of the modern world, these problems and issues, right? So the postmodernist movement is seeing past this, and they're rebelling against this whole idea. But what's happening now is that they're falling into their own trap. They're having their own issues, which is now what they're saying is, well, nothing has any defined objective meaning. There is no absolutes. There is no absolute truth. There's not. It's all up for grabs. Truth is whatever you want it to be. You choose. You define it. You accept it as you want it to. You want to accept it. So, but at the same time, I think people now, this postmodern era, people now have realized not only the folly of the modern way of looking at things, but also the issues and problems with atheism. Atheism, this claim that, God does not exist, and we are rational creatures, and human reason could lead us to, or to be more specific, empiricism could lead us to truth. They don't accept this nonsense anymore. They understand this, So they're in a better position to truly interact and engage with the message of Islam, I believe. So, and this is why I encourage people who have sort of broken free of this atheist spell to really look into Islam, and to approach it with fresh eyes, not through the lenses of what people want you to see it. Because remember, there's unfortunately many times we approach a particular subject or a thing through the lenses of someone else, and we don't take an objective look at it and don't sit down and think about these things for ourselves. So to look at the Quran, study the Quran, look into Islam objectively, honestly, from a non-biased perspective, and see what it has to say to you. And at the very least, one thing you would realize is the truths that the Enlightenment philosophers, the Enlightenment movement, the modernists, the atheists, to be more specific, took away from you. Islam has the answers to those questions. When you're inquiring about the purpose of your existence, who are you? Why do you exist? What's your purpose? Why does this life exist? What's it all about? Is there any objective truth to morality? Because I feel it, but right now, from my perspective, I can't justify it. Well, Islam provides you with that grounding. It comprehensively puts things into perspective for humanity. And that's the power of Islam. And there's another very interesting book by an author named Ahmed Keller. This is probably one of the only books that I've actually read all the way through, and I'm planning on reading it again. And it's called Rethinking Islam in the West. And he highlights, look, and again, I want to clarify some things because I've spoken about modernism and postmodernism, and I want to clarify that from the Islamic perspective, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be thinking about progress, that we shouldn't be, living in this material world and making the most of it and developing in this world and producing medicine, doing all of these amazing things. Absolutely, we should. And this is something that Keller outlines in his book, Islam in the West, that Islam provides that balance. Islam provides the balance between the horizontal plane and the vertical plane, that which was lost during the Enlightenment period, because they just simply focus on the horizontal plane, and that's what the world's been doing for so long. But Islam has that beautiful balance between these two planes, that humanity is reminded that you have a creator. You were created to worship God, that you're going to return to your creator, that this life is a temporary abode, that you're here for a specific reason, a purpose, which is to worship your creator, but to also, that worship is going to take place in many ways by you being put through tests in this life. This is an examination room of sorts. So it puts those things into perspective. It brings accountability into one's life. The consciousness, awareness into one's life that you're here, God is watching you. That you're here, He's made you a moral being, an upright being. So live like that. Sure, you have this negative side to you, this evil side to you. Every human being has evil inclinations too, but you don't act upon those selfish inclinations. You act upon the positive inclinations. You live as an upright moral human being. That's what the prophets came to teach. They came as role models for us to demonstrate this. So Islam provides that balance, but at the same time, we're in this world, and Islam encourages you to use this world in the right way. Sure, make progress. Sure, develop medicines. But always be conscious of that vertical plane as well. Progress in the sciences, progress in from a worldly perspective, but be in balance. Don't do it in a way where you're harming other people. You're destroying the planet. You're leading and leaving more than, I don't know what, 80-90% of the world's population into starvation and oppression just to benefit in one part of the world. No, this injustice is removed from that perspective, so the balance is established. And you're not going to get this via atheism. Atheism isn't the way forward. Most people have realized this. They moved on. Atheism doesn't provide you with any grounding. It just leaves you in this subjective realm of deciding what you think is right, what you think is wrong. And you can see how dangerous that has been, historically speaking, and how dangerous it can be moving forward. And the very thing that most people think is a threat, is something evil, is something bad, referring to Islam, is actually the solution. Only if people took the time to really look into it and to study and see what it has to say. So I just wanted to share these thoughts with you. So to summarize and to conclude, atheism predominantly exists because at one point in history, not too long ago, maybe a couple of 100 years ago, it had utility. It was useful to push a particular view, a particular agenda. But now, that particular outlook on reality of material progress and pursuing a worldly utopia has been exposed and has been highlighted to be a failed project. Atheism has lost it's lost its sugar daddy, if you like, whatever you want to call it. It's lost its companion. And now obviously atheism itself is on the decline, and although some atheists are trying to now establish atheism and ground atheism, and make it stand on its own 2 feet, such as the Four Horsemen, Richard Dawkins, etc., it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And people, again, like I've said before, people have seen right through it. And this is why those people that are waking up, I really encourage you to look into Islam, like I've said already, and to really study it and see what it says to you. Don't take my word for it. Just see what it says to you. Read it for yourself. And yeah, that's it. If you guys have any questions, I know you guys have been posting loads of comments, mashallah. I'm gonna just go through and see if there's any questions. If you have any questions, if you've written any questions above, please post them again, because I'm on my phone and it's very difficult to navigate this. We'll see what you guys are saying. It's very small. So Abdul says extremes of postmodernism indeed build a good groundwork for Islam. Absolutely, because now it's fertile ground for people are questioning. They're open, very open right now. So this is the perfect time to share the message of Islam with people, and I'm sure many people, whoever reads it sincerely and honestly, would see its truth, inshallah. Okay, someone's speaking about. I know it's not a related topic about kissing the stone and at the Kaaba and worshiping the Kaaba, claim to be pure. Muslims claim to be pure monotheists. Look, this is a big misconception, and it's something that's spread by a lot of Christian missionaries. The idea that Muslims worship the Kaaba or a part of the Kaaba. This is not true. The Kaaba, if people were to take the time to research this and look into this, is the first place of worship that was built on this earth, right? So it has that significance. It was built by Abraham and his son. It was the direction of prayer, and it is for the Muslim the direction of prayer today. Now, after the advent of Islam, it's the point which it's the direction we focus in, and and there's many wisdoms behind this. One of the wisdoms is that the salah, the prayer itself, is something that reminds humanity of its its relation to one another and its relation to its creator. Because when you're praying, you could be standing in front of a businessman or a cleaner. You're all equal. There is no difference. This is why Islam in a profound way removes racism, removes all of these type of terrible racist ideas that again were in some cases were I'm not going to get into that now, but so it removes racism completely. It removes these type and it reminds humanity you are all on equal playing field. You are all equal except in piety. If there's any difference between you, it's going to be in the level between how close you are to God, how much good you do, how much of a pious person you are. You can be. That's where the competition is, and it's a good type of competition. And the Kaaba is the direction of prayer. It unites Muslims in one specific direction, and we sanctify that as a holy place, the Kaaba. We have this love for that direction and that place, not because we worship it, not because God is in that place, because we understand its significance in history, and we understand that it's a very, very how could you say, it's one of the most spiritual places on earth, and it's the first place of worship that was built for humanity. It's not that we worship the place, no, absolutely no. See, and again, it goes back to my point. There are so many misconceptions about Islam out there, and it's unfortunate that people are holding on to these misconceptions. What's interesting, and I'll end on this, I guess. Yesterday, I did a video responding to Alex, Cosmic Skeptic, on some of his thoughts on the meaning of life. And in the comment section, I think it was an atheist, they turned around and said, they asked me 3 questions, and at the end of it they said something like along the lines of, I don't think I'm going to be, whatever you say, I don't think I'm going to be convinced. You're not going to have the right answers. And I was just thinking, subhanAllah, that on one end you're asking questions, but on the other hand, you're already convinced that you're not going to be convinced of what I say to you. So then why ask the question in the first place? I mean, what are you doing for yourself and for me by asking me questions? You're wasting your time, and I'm going to be wasting my time if I answer you, because you're already convinced. And this is the position most people, unfortunately, put themselves in, which is they close themselves off. They actually become narrow-minded from that perspective. That okay, I already know, done. There's no more answers. And this is what happens many times with atheists and some non-Muslims, that whatever they've heard from the grapevine or from whatever source out there about Islam, they have taken it to heart, and they actually have convinced themselves that this is true about Islam, when they probably never picked up the Quran and read it for themselves, when they probably never listened to even a lecture on Islam, on the basics of Islam. So it's something that people need to overcome. It's a barrier between them and the truth. Do you use any products for your beard? No, actually don't. This is actually in bad state at the moment. But alhamdulillah, it's just I guess I wash it once in a while, and that's it pretty much. And here's a tip: if you have a beard, right? If you have a beard, I would say don't use shampoo, use soap. Okay? For some reason, I don't know what's in shampoos or most shampoos, it really dries your skin out, especially in winter. So don't do that. That's just a tip, inshallah. Just use soap, and it's also recommended that you don't use shampoo on even your hair every day, because it really dries out the scalp and it removes natural oil. So you don't want to do that either, inshallah. Any further book recommendations? Yeah, so let me give you guys. Um, 1 second, guys. There is a call coming through. So apologies for that. Just had a call coming through. Couldn't cancel it for some reason. So book recommendations. This is a really good one on the history of atheism. Divine Reality by Hamza is probably the best book on atheism. Period. For a Muslim, from a Muslim perspective, and for non-Muslims. It's a really it's a all-in-one book. So definitely read the Divine Reality. Other books. What's coming to mind? The book by Ahmed Keller, Rethinking Islam in the West, is an amazing book. Definitely read that. And again, Muslims and non-Muslims to read that book. It's really, really good. Nothing else is coming to mind that I've been going through recently. To be honest, I haven't been reading many books recently. I've been listening to books, and the book I already mentioned several times in today's live, which was Civilized to Death. I don't remember what the author's name, I think Robert something. Civilized to Death, very good book, inshallah. So read those books, are really good to go through, inshallah. Let's see. Yeah, guys, what I'll do probably, I will do a live for you guys very soon, inshallah, with book recommendations in particular. But yeah, I will do that soon, inshallah. We'll do it. I have one on my channel already. I've done it a few months ago. So if you guys want, you can scroll through on the videos and find that. But I will do a new one very soon, inshallah. Yeah, I know there's been a lot of discussions and I think debates going on in the chat of this live. So brothers and sisters, if you're Muslim, please just some advice: keep it civil. Demonstrate the Muslim character. Be gentle and soft in your approach. There's no need to get aggressive and use bad language. I've noticed this many times. Sometimes we fall into this. We shouldn't fall into the trap. What we have speaks for itself. So just communicate that in the most beautiful and simple way possible, without using profanities or bad language of any type, inshallah. So yeah, that's just advice for the Muslims. For the atheists, man, what I would say is, again, if you can, please, if you're genuinely, on these channels to find out, inquire, and you have questions, again, be civil in your discussions. Any history books? Yeah, I was actually reading, and I've stopped reading it. I need to continue. I was going through the Silk Roads. From what I've read so far, I've really enjoyed it. It's very, very detailed, and the author writes in a very nice way. But that's a good one. History books. Other than that, anything comes to mind? Nothing else is coming to mind at the moment. But the Silk Roads is really good. There's one called a brief history or a little history of the world, something like that. It's a classic. It's one of the probably the most popular history book. It's quite old, but it's written beautifully. It's really, really nice to read, inshallah. So definitely pick that up and read that as well. Okay, let's see if there's any other questions. Yeah, that's it, guys, inshallah. So we'll wrap up. Like this, someone's advised already. That when it comes to the chat section, guys, please keep it civil. Don't use it as a means to debate and argue with each other. If anything, help each other out, and just be positive, man. Inshallah, we don't have that much time to waste on this earth that we can engage. We should be, should be engaging in trivial, unnecessary, pointless debates and discussions which go nowhere. So just use it productively, inshallah. It's a means, it's an opportunity for you to give da'wah. So use it in the right way, inshallah. Yeah. Jazakallah khair, brothers and sisters. We'll end here. May Allah bless you. We have a live next Tuesday, the circle. So definitely join us for that, inshallah. And I will leave you with that. Assalamu alaikum.